Joel used Happiness as his ringtone. He and Tanya had both loved the song back when they were still together. He was about to take out his phone when he saw Tanya reach for hers and answer it. He quickly realized that Tanya used the same song as her ringtone. Did she think of him when she chose that specific ringtone? Was she also having trouble forgetting the connection they once had? Joel had moved behind a big pillar so he could quietly observe her. He had taken a moment to indulge in wishful thinking. His happy thoughts were interrupted when he looked at Tanya and saw the joy on her face. She had the phone to her ear and said excitedly, "Darling, so it was you who helped me out." He stood rooted to the spot, unable to stop listening to the one-sided conversation. "Of course I'll reward you. Do you want a kiss? Or perhaps I'll stay and sleep next to you for a few nights." Tanya listened to the reply and responded, "Oh, don't be shy. I'll give you a big kiss." She tilted her head to the side, listening. "Dinner? No problem, I can't wait. Text me the location." Tanya ended the call and quickly got up. She turned away from the bench and excitedly walked away. After she left, Joel moved out from behind the big pillar at the school gates. He stared at the direction in which she had driven away, his eyes flickering dimly. She had a darling she wanted to give a big kiss and stay over with. The phrases made Joel very uncomfortable. It felt like there was a ticking time bomb on the verge of exploding, somewhere hidden in his body. Without a moment's hesitation, he got into his car and followed her. He didn't know why he was doing it or what he planned to do once they reached their destination, but the usually calm and self-disciplined man couldn't seem to stop himself. He only wanted to see where she was going. Tanya drove her SUV to Club Prism. After parking, she looked up and gazed at the familiar place. Having been around for many years, the club attracted the rich and famous for a good time. Tanya had been the baggage her mother had brought with her when she married into a wealthy family in her early years. When they were a little older, Hillary had loved to invite her to the club to ridicule her, because Tanya hadn't been allowed in the club. Her social status hadn't been considered high enough, and she hadn't owned a VIP card back then. All she had been able to do was stand at the door anxiously and wait for Hillary to remember that she was there. Later, she stopped going. Shaking off the memories, Tanya got out of her SUV. Hillary had made plans to meet her friends for dinner at Club Prism. She had parked her car and was about to enter the main hall. When she turned her head, she noticed Tanya heading toward the club. She bit her lip in anger. Why had Tanya followed her here? Was she stalking her? She narrowed her eyes and beckoned the lobby manager over. She pointed to Tanya, who was standing outside, and said, "Don't let that woman in." The lobby manager glanced at Hillary and retorted, "Ms. Jones, I have no right to refuse her entry if she's a legitimate customer." A look of displeasure crossed her face when she saw that her words weren't affecting the lobby manager. She said acidly, "You may not care about my identity as Ms. Jones, but what about my identity as Mrs. Smith?" The lobby manager was rattled. Hillary looked down and said, "You should know that although Joel and I aren't married yet, I've already moved into the Smiths' residence." The lobby manager frowned. A smirking Hillary said, "Perhaps you are still not interested in helping, but what about Joel? Do you really want to incur his anger?" The lobby manager was stunned. Hillary pointed to the area outside and said, "That woman is a dance teacher at the kindergarten. She injured our daughter. She followed me here because she wants to apologize. I don't want to see her, and I don't think Joel would want to either. Understand?" The lobby manager frowned. Although Club Prism wasn't afraid of anyone, they still had a lot of respect for Joel. The manager nodded and said, "All right, Ms. Jones." Resentment welled up in Hillary at being addressed as Ms. Jones. It was the kid's fault. If Mia had been a boy, Hillary would have been married to Joel a long time ago. Actually, it was Tanya's fault for having such an ineffective womb that she gave birth to a girl. She took a deep breath and entered a private room. Tanya was about to enter the club when she was stopped. "Excuse me, miss, do you have an appointment?" Club Prism's customers were all wealthy or famous. The diners were members of the club, and they either had a VIP card, such as Hillary, or they were gold card VIPs, such as Justin and Joel. The only other way to gain entrance to the club was to be invited by a member. Tanya replied, "Yes, the room number is..." But before she could finish, the lobby manager's voice reached her. "I'm sorry, miss, but I can't let you in." Tanya was surprised. The lobby manager said apologetically, "Ms. Jones let us know that Mr. Smith has left instructions refusing to let you in." Ms. Jones and Mr. Smith. Tanya felt an ache in her heart at the mention of their names. She narrowed her eyes and said, "I'm not here for them. I have an appointment with someone else here." The lobby manager sighed and said, "By rights, we shouldn't be denying your entry, miss, but Ms. Jones said that Mr. Smith has instructed that you're not allowed to be anywhere that she is. If I let you in, I'll end up offending him." The lobby manager wasn't a social climber, but for the sake of his own livelihood, he could only say, "How about this? Is it all right if I get someone to bring a chair here for you to let you wait outside?" Tanya narrowed her eyes as her chest tightened. She could give Nora a call and ask her to come out and get her, of course. But if this was really an instruction from Joel, wouldn't that mean Nora would end up offending him because of her? Although she had already resolved the issue at the kindergarten for her, Tanya was unwilling to keep making trouble for other people. She clenched her fists, utterly humiliated. Many years ago, she hadn't been able to enter the club. Later, it was Joel that had taken her inside. Now, years later, she still couldn't enter the club by herself, but she didn't have Joel with her to smooth things over. "No, I'll leave," she answered, her heart filled with sorrow as she lowered her head and smiled bitterly. She would have to leave her treat for another day. When she turned to leave, she saw another car stopping at the entrance. Joel opened the door at the driver's side and got out. Tanya stopped in her tracks. Her lips crooked into a wry smile, and she whispered to herself, "No wonder they didn't let me in." She lowered her head and looked straight in front of her, pretending she didn't see Joel. She walked past him and said to the parking valet, "Please get my car, thanks." "Yes, ma'am." Joel didn't look directly at Tanya, but he watched her out of the corner of his eye. When he saw that she was leaving, he felt relieved. But since he was already there, he decided to enter the lobby. Just as he was wondering why Tanya hadn't met her darling for dinner, the lobby manager came forward and said, "Welcome, Mr. Smith. As per your instructions, we've prevented that lady from coming in. Rest assured, we won't allow her to bother you." Joel stopped in his tracks and looked at the lobby manager. He asked, "What do you mean you won't allow her to bother me?" The lobby manager was very savvy. Seeing Joel's reaction, it all clicked, and he replied, "Mrs. Smith told us not to allow the lady at the entrance to come in. She said that it was per your instruction." He lowered his head and chose his words carefully. "We don't have a rule like that at Club Prism, but Mrs. Smith said that it was an instruction from you, and we wanted to accommodate your wishes. That's why we agreed to do it." "On my instructions?" Joel's expression became stony, and he said deliberately, "She's not Mrs. Smith yet." The lobby manager put on a show of looking scared and said, "My apologies, Mr. Smith. I've always addressed her as Ms. Jones, but she demanded that we change the term of address today." Joel didn't look angry, but when he turned and saw Tanya, his eyes darkened a little. Joel looked away from Tanya as the lobby manager was about to say something else and replied, "We'll leave it at that, then." He didn't feel like letting her come in for a dinner date. The lobby manager was dumbfounded. He had been able to read people's body language for over 10 years and had never made a mistake. Had he guessed wrongly this time? Hillary was clearly playing her own game, yet Mr. Smith had allowed it. He withdrew his gaze and became a lot more respectful. "All right, Mr. Smith, as you wish." Tanya waited idly for the parking valet to bring her car over. A small group was heading in her direction. "Hey, is that who I think it is? Is it really Tanya?" Tanya turned and saw a few of Hillary's old friends walking towards her. They were her old high school friends. The Joneses were considered a moderately wealthy family, and all of them had tried to get in Hillary's good graces back then. But why were they here? Were Hillary and Joel having dinner with them? Tanya clenched her jaw. When Tanya and Joel had been dating, he had despised them. Hillary brought them over once to he couldn't be bothered to pay them any attention back then. Yet now he was willing to spend time with them for Hillary's sake. It seemed people could change after all. While she was inwardly mocking Joel, her ex-classmates started to taunt her. Tanya, are you thinking of going in for dinner? Why don't you ask Hillary to get you in the door? Why are you standing around here for? I heard you were the champion in an international dance competition. Why can't you get an invite to a small club like this? What's the big deal about being a world champion anyway? Did you win any prize money? Have you spent it all? Tanya's eyes narrowed at their mockery. She sneered. Today I finally witnessed what it means to ride on someone's coattails. Her words were too subtle, and it took them a while to understand what she was saying. As soon as the penny dropped, they became angry. One of the guys stepped forward and pushed her. He harshly demanded, "Are you sure you want to talk to us like that?" Another girl in the group said, "Who do you think you are? Is it true that you think you're all that great just because some wealthy families invite you to teach them to dance after you won that championship? At the end of the day, you're still just a dance teacher. Just look at you now. You're teaching kindergarten kids. Why don't you give one of your students' parents a call and ask them to invite you into the club? She probably can't convince them to help her. At least we can sneak in because of Hillary." Tanya was highly sought after among wealthy families. Given her status, it would not be too hard for her to enter the club if she wanted to. She could easily get a VIP card. However, Joel had instructed the club staff to prevent her from entering, and he held a lot more power at the club than she did. The Hunts were the only people in the city who didn't fear offending Joel. She didn't want to trouble the Hunts. Tanya lowered her eyes. The parking valet had finally brought her SUV over. As she walked to the driver's side door, they stopped her again just as she was about to get in the car. One of the men in the group said, "Hey, that's a pretty impressive car you're driving. Only someone rich could afford to drive an SUV like that. Was it a gift from one of the parents? I heard that some of the teachers use excuses of giving dance lessons just so they can fool around with the kids' dads instead." They all laughed mockingly. Their comments were becoming increasingly ridiculous, and the look on Tanya's face turned even colder. She couldn't tolerate it anymore. She was about to step forward and teach the foul-mouthed guy a lesson when a tall figure rushed over. He moved quickly and grabbed the offensive guy by his collar. Before anyone could even react, he socked him right in the face. The sound of a fist slamming into flesh rang out. The guy stumbled a few steps backward and spat out a couple of teeth. His head whipped up as he shouted, "Who the hell?" But when he saw Joel and the frosty look on his face, he swallowed the rest of his words. The people around them were staring at the scene in shock. They hastily took a step back and stammered, "Mr. Smith." Joel's chilling gaze swept across them. At last, he coldly ordered, "Get lost." Frightened out of their wits by the public display of violence, they fled. The crowd still standing around, gawking, started to point at them as they speculated among themselves. Someone could be heard faintly commenting, "That woman made a scene just because she couldn't get into the club. It's appalling." Joel abruptly turned to Tanya. He grabbed her wrist and dragged her with him as he walked to the lobby entrance. The lobby manager was standing at the entrance. Joel pushed Tanya slightly in front of him and said to the manager, "Remember what she looks like. From now on, no one is allowed to stop her any time she comes here." The manager nodded. "Yes, Mr. Smith." Tanya stared at Joel in shock after his declaration. What was wrong with him? He was the one who didn't want to allow her inside earlier. Suddenly he was acting like a hero, saving a damsel in distress. As if sensing her thoughts, Joel turned and left the club without looking back. After hearing the news of what had happened outside the club from her cronies, Hillary abandoned her dinner plans, got up from her table, and rushed home. As soon as she entered the house, she went to Joel and said, "I'm sorry. I don't know why my friends would do that. I went to the kindergarten this morning to thank Tanya, but instead of appreciating my gesture, she slapped me." Hillary tilted her head and held her cheek. She said pitifully, "When my friends heard what happened, They asked me out to Club Prism, so I headed over. I really didn't expect that they would exact revenge on my behalf, or that they would use your name to stop Tanya from entering the club." She lifted her head and looked at him with red eyes. "It's fortunate that you were there to rescue Tanya. I couldn't stand it if she suffered because of me. I'm so sorry, Joel." Joel raised his head calmly, scoffed, and pointed to the papers lying on the table. Hilary was surprised. Her expression quickly changed to shock as she picked up the documents. Her heart dropped into her stomach as she realized that Joel had conducted an investigation and had found evidence against her. Hilary picked up the pages and stared at the evidence. The first page had information about her conflict with Tanya at the kindergarten. The photo clearly showed that Hilary had provoked Tanya first and humiliated her. Tanya had retaliated. The second page showed photos of her speaking with the lobby manager at Club Prism. Her facial expression in the photo was smug. Hilary balled up her fists. She wanted to say something, but before she could get a word out, Joel said coolly, "There are surveillance cameras in both the kindergarten and the club. If you continue to deny it, I can ask for the video footage. Allow me to remind you that surveillance camera footage comes with audio nowadays." Hilary's retort instantly got stuck in her throat. She stared at Joel in shock. A moment later, she finally hung her head dejectedly and said, "It's my fault this time. I only did it because I panicked when I saw Tanya was back. I was afraid that she would take you away from me. She told me that she's back to take revenge on me and take everything I have from me." Then she started to cry and she said, "You know Tanya has been fighting with me over everything since we were kids. I had no other choice. I just wanted her to leave. I just wanted to protect what's mine." She looked at Joel again and said, "There's Mia too. Of all the kindergartens around, why did she go to that one? It's because she knows that Mia is our daughter. Whatever her plans are, it must include Mia somehow. I don't know how she did it, but she's already won her over. It's only been a day and Mia's already asking for her." She stared at Joel and went on, "There's no way someone like Tanya would be content to leave things as they are. Don't forget that she abandoned you for dancing. Her life abroad all these years must not have been that great. That's why she wanted to come back, even though she won the championship. She must be thinking of pursuing you. She abandoned you for dancing." The words were playing on a loop in Joel's mind. They stabbed brutally like a knife to his heart. He lowered his eyes and let out a cold chuckle. Tanya would easily give up anything for the sake of dancing, but he would never believe that she would pursue him as a way to gain fame and fortune. No matter how much people might change, they wouldn't abandon their basic principles. Besides, she had gone to the kindergarten for her son. Now that she had Justin Hunt, there was no need for her to pursue him anymore. The icy smile at Joel's lips became tinged with a hint of bitterness. He'd rather she pursued him instead. "Joel, I really regret what happened. I won't do anything like that ever again, no matter how much Tanya provokes me in the future. There's no need to worry. Although she betrayed you in the past, the two of you are still on good terms, so..." Before Hilary could continue sowing discord, Joel said detachedly, "Do you remember what I said when you first came to live with us?" What he had said? Hilary bit her lip. She had wormed her way into the household by using his daughter as her reason for being there. But Joel had blatantly refused to marry and only gave her the title of fiancé. He was the one who had moved into the house with the excuse that his daughter needed a mother. She had cared for and fussed over Mia ever since, thereby stopping Joel from driving her away. But on the night she moved in, a heartless Joel had said, "If you stay content with our agreement and behave accordingly, I don't mind turning a blind eye to most of your actions. But you're not allowed to publicly call yourself Mrs. Smith. This isn't negotiable, and if I ever find out that you violated this rule, I won't let you off the hook." Hilary didn't care about any of that at the time. She had agreed to his terms right away. For years, she watched over Mia carefully, hoping that Joel would register their marriage once enough time had passed. That way, she would still become Mrs. Smith, even if they didn't have a wedding ceremony. As time went by, she realized that she hardly had any interaction with Joel. Her only contact with him was when she dropped off or picked up Mia. There were strangers living in the same house, claiming to have a close relationship. Her thoughts were interrupted when Joel continued, "Since you've broken the rules, get out." Get out? Hillary's head whipped up and she stared at him incredulously. Joel's eyes were still mild-mannered, regardless of his reprimand. Astonished, she asked, "What did you say?" Joel stood up and said mercilessly, "You violated our agreement." Hillary started to tremble. If truth be told, this wasn't the first time she had violated the agreement over the years. When she moved into Joel's house, the Joneses had already tacitly recognized them as husband and wife. The implied connection led to better business opportunities for the Joneses. Hillary had been on tenterhooks when the Joneses first used the Smiths' name in business dealings, but she had later discovered that Joel didn't care at all, even when he found out about it. After that, she had let her guard down. Why was he bringing up the agreement now? Hillary reached out and grabbed Joel's sleeve. She said, "I know what I did was wrong. I'll never do anything like that again." Joel pulled his sleeve out of her grip. There was no trace of emotion in his eyes. He asked coldly, "Are you going to leave by yourself, or should I get someone to throw you out?" Hillary's legs went weak, and she almost fell to the floor. 5 years. She had lived in this house for 5 years. How cruel and heartless must he be to dismiss her so coldly? She sobered at once. It would be pointless to rely on Joel's sympathy or feelings for her. His daughter was the only person who could change his mind about this. Hillary's eyes were brimming with tears. She gazed at Joel and said, "I was wrong, and I admit it. I'll leave, but can I see Mia before I go?" Joel stared at her with a hard look in his eyes. "Okay, but when you see her, be careful what you say to her. Should I remind you what you can and can't say in front of her?" Hillary's gaze flickered. She lowered her head and replied, "No, I'm aware." Only then did Joel instruct the nanny, "Bring Mia over." After suffering an allergic reaction at school the day before, Mia was resting at home and hadn't gone to school that day. She was playing by herself in the bedroom. When the nanny brought her over, she asked timidly, "Mummy, Dad, what's the matter?" Hillary quickly put on an affectionate and devoted act. She hugged Mia and said, "Mummy has to go away for a while. You must promise to behave at home, okay?" She had already thought about it. Joel couldn't drive her away if she kicked up a fuss in front of his daughter. Hillary had only one option left. She had to show him that Mia was reluctant to let her leave. Maybe he would reconsider if she could make the little girl cry and hold her in her arms to comfort her. It was the only way he would allow her to stay. She was confident that she had treated Mia well enough over the years. There was no way Mia would cope with being away from her mother. She stared at Mia and asked, "Will you miss me?" But to her shock and surprise, Mia merely nodded and replied timidly, "Go ahead, Mommy. I'll be a good girl." Hillary stared at Mia incredulously. She wondered if she had misheard her. It seemed like such a heartless thing for the little brat to say. She didn't seem to be experiencing even the slightest bit of reluctance to part with her. She clenched her fists. "What did you say, Mia?" Mia met her eyes and repeated timidly, "I'll be a good girl, Mummy. You don't have to worry about me." Hillary felt a wave of frustration. The look in her eyes gradually turned menacing. She wanted to lose her temper and make a scene, but when she saw the man seated on the sofa, she swallowed her anger. She berated herself for expecting Mia to be any better. Of course the little girl had no loyalty to her. They had no blood relation to tie them together. She had never dared to treat her unkindly all these years, or at least she hadn't dared to do anything outright abusive. The worst thing she had ever really done was complain that Mia wasn't a boy, and even that had been too much. Joel had let her off with a stern warning. Hillary wanted to say more, but Joel looked over dispassionately and said, "Aren't you in a hurry? You can leave after you say goodbye to Mia." "Fine." She didn't dare say anything anymore. She nodded, took a deep breath, and went upstairs. After packing a small bag, she came back down and said, "I'm only taking a few of my usual outfits, Joel. I'll go home for a few days, for now. so you can have some space to calm down and think. I'll come back again when you aren't so mad anymore, okay? Joel neither agreed nor disagreed. He merely gave her a small smile. Even in the middle of this horrible situation, Hilary appreciated his smile. She couldn't deny she had fallen in love with a handsome and gentle man. She left the house with her suitcase in hand. After she left, Joel turned to Mia. He picked up his daughter and looked at her little face. Her big eyes were filled with puzzlement. He said, Mia, I was thinking we probably shouldn't allow Mummy to come back anymore. Is that okay with you? Mia was still young, so she didn't completely understand all these sudden changes. Her eyes merely flickered a little when she heard what her father said. When she put it all together, she felt her mother treated her decently. Although she had had a nanny to help take care of her daily needs ever since she was a baby, her mother had still taken her to school in the morning and picked her up in the evening every day. She even slept in bed with her. However, she had never told anyone that she was afraid of her mother. There was no love in her mother's eyes whenever she looked at her. When she looked at Mia and smiled, it seemed more like she was smiling at a piece of jewelry she had added to her collection. Her mother often told her to make her father happy. She wanted her to be obedient and not make any noise or trouble. She forbade her from so many little things over time that the girl, who had already been a timid child, became even more shy. On bad days, Hilary had said with a voice full of resentment, "It's all because you're not a boy. That's why your father doesn't want to marry me." After hearing that too many times, Mia had become a little afraid of her mother without even realizing it. She felt kind of bad, but the truth was, when she found out that Hilary was leaving, Mia had actually breathed a small sigh of relief. She stretched out her little arms and put them around Joel's neck. She sounded as timid as ever as she said, "Okay." As soon as she agreed, Joel called out to the butler. The butler immediately appeared at his side and asked, "Is there something you need, sir?" Joel looked up in the direction of Hilary's room on the second floor and said, "Pack up the things in Hilary's bedroom and send them to the Joneses. Do not allow her to ever enter this house again." "Yes, sir." At the sight of the butler going upstairs and getting people to pack up the things in the bedroom, Mia felt inexplicably reassured. At Club Prism, Justin was ordering food for himself and Cherry in the private room. As the head of the Hunts, he had nutritionists who managed his diet. Justin had always preferred mild-tasting food and never had particular cravings for rich or sweet things. He was equally strict on Pete. But this evening, he looked at Cherry and said, "You can order whatever you want." Cherry pointed to the ice cream and said, "Daddy, this looks delicious." The weather hadn't even turned warm yet. The idea of Cherry eating too much ice cream while the weather was still cold made Justin hesitate. But then he looked into his daughter's big, innocent eyes, nodded, and said, "Okay, we'll order it." Cherry pointed at the French fries. "Daddy, I want to eat this." Fried, greasy food like French fries were obviously unhealthy. Justin never ate such things, but he nevertheless said, "Okay, we'll order it." "Daddy, I want this too." "All right, we'll order it." They went back and forth for a few minutes, with Cherry suggesting all sorts of dishes and Justin agreeing to every single one of them. As a result, the table was quickly filled with messy, random dishes before Nora even arrived. The table was full of food, but the pair merely stared at the dishes. Neither of them touched a thing. Cherry swallowed. "Why isn't Mummy here yet?" Justin also raised his eyebrows. He was about to reply when the thudding of footsteps suddenly reached them from the door. He couldn't help but say, "Your Mummy always seems to be running late, huh?" Cherry nodded. She was already holding the ice cream and ready to dig in the moment her mum sat down. The footsteps got closer and closer. Something suddenly occurred to Justin, and he remembered, "I've never seen your Mummy wear high heels, have you?" He couldn't help breaking into a smile the moment he said that. Nora had always worn flat-heeled shoes in the past, yet she had suddenly put on high heels for the date today. He wondered if she had put on makeup and dressed up too. It seemed that he wasn't the only one who was looking forward to the meal after all. However, Cherry blinked and tilted her head to the side hesitantly. She replied, "But Mummy doesn't ever buy heels." Justin frowned at her quizzically. If Nora didn't own a pair of high heels, then why did her footsteps sound like that? As Justin thought this, someone suddenly pushed the door open. At once, a tall and slender woman with long arms and legs appeared in the door. Before she even entered, her loud voice reached them. Nora, you can't ask me to treat you to dinner and then pick a big expensive place like this. If the bill is huge, then we have to split it. If you try and tell me you forgot your wallet, I'm leaving. Oh, wait, what? Who are you? It was Tanya. She looked from Justin to Cherry and back again in shock. In a much more subdued voice, she asked, Am I in the wrong room? She didn't know what to think. Cherry was there, which was right, but there was no sign of Nora. And as far as she knew, Justin didn't know about the children changing places. Did this mean she needed to spend the meal pretending Cherry was Pete? She swallowed, picked up her cell phone, and called Nora. Where are you? Nora's lazy voice rang out on the phone. Mr. Hunt was the one who did you the favor. Why do I have to be present when you're the one treating him to dinner? Tanya and Justin gaped at the phone as if it were Nora herself. Cherry was the only one who seemed happy to accept this explanation. She dug into her ice cream with a spoon. The private room fell into an uncomfortable silence. In the end, Tanya smiled awkwardly and said, Of course, I'll take care of the bill, Mr. Hunt. Please enjoy your meal with Cherry, Pates. She added quickly, trying to cover up her blunder with Pate's nickname. Tanya quickly slipped away. With Nora absent and Justin indulging her, Cherry finally had her fill of food. It was only when her belly was round and bulging that she finally went home with her sullen-faced father. The villa was under renovation, so the two of them stayed at the Hunt Manor that night. It was already late, so they didn't see any of the other family members as they prepared to go to bed. Cherry obediently went to bed after Justin sent her to her room. For reasons he couldn't explain, Justin suddenly woke up around 1 a.m. Acting on instinct, he went next door with an uneasy feeling in his stomach. He intended to check on Cherry and make sure she was tucked into bed properly. However, as soon as he opened the door, he saw his daughter holding her belly with her hands, her forehead covered in perspiration. Justin's eyes widened in shock. He hastily went over and picked up his daughter, who moaned with pain. In her dazed state, she saw Justin and said, Daddy, my stomach hurts so much. Justin hastily carried her downstairs, but Cherry cried out, I want Mummy. Mummy. On the way to the hospital, Justin took out his cell phone and called Nora. The phone rang for a very long time before it was finally picked up. The recipient also sounded displeased as she said, You better have something important to say. He replied,
You're always outside. Why? Because you're out in the heat? Well, I guess we can talk about it later or whatever. You're funny. I'd love to know what he said to you. What my son told you. People can want in one hand and shit in the other and see which one gets filled first. I'm not like the girls today. Hmm. What he should have told you was, you need to stop with these females and be with my mother. That's what he should have told you. Like I need protecting. I want love, real, honest love. I don't want to be hidden anymore.
Oh, right. Getting a ring in my ear. This is the Beauty and the Beast diamond ring. It's Belle. can't listen to my book while I'm on StreamYard. And I like my book more than I like YouTube. Odd. You like a book more than you like YouTube. That's the way things are. At least you can get lost in a book. Can't get lost on YouTube. There's really nowhere to get lost to. No, you know, if I don't have my company in the future, I think my husband loves me, children, but it's a blended family. Fame and fortune, all that traveling and stuff might be lived without. Because that doesn't matter in life. Being famous and having everyone love you, everything. And I don't want the fame and fortune if I have to leave. I'd rather have the family. I'm on the right path. I'm exactly where I need to be right now. Be in the present. Don't think about the past. Don't think about the future. We're not given tomorrow. We're not even given 5 minutes from now. If I go into a full meditation, I might not come out this time. I want to, but The last time I did, I nearly didn't come back. Although it was peaceful where I was at, I was up on a white plane. It was kind of like a cloud, but it was more solid. And just below my feet, and my ankles and my soles and my feet was all white like snow. Like I was standing on a cloud, but I was firm enough where I wouldn't fall off and fall through it. My cloud was white, a white cloud stretching as far as the eye could see. I stood there. I walked a little bit, still continued to stand. I didn't know where I was going, but all I knew it was forward. I didn't see anybody. No one came to talk to me. I was by myself. Jesus didn't come. God didn't come. The devil himself didn't show up. It was just me on that cloud. It was light for others. And very magical. Not only an impact, but and the fear as well. I could see into the future and I can see into the past. Not that fine from this world. I won't be coming back here, and I won't be going into this life. This is my last time on earth. my very last life, presently 200,000 years on this planet. In every lifetime, when years was not coming back, I'm too good for this world. Everyone wanna know why, but I don't judge anyone. Because I'm no better than any of you. I have my faults. I don't break laws, but I do have my faults. I walk, I walk the very example Jesus was trying to teach. I do believe in magic, like he used to do. I know how to cast out demons. And that's simple. Yes, demons exist, but they are not what the religious people want them to be. They're just God's angels that had fallen during the war. That's all they are. They're angels. If you ever meet an angel, even you don't think that they're an angel, 9 times out of 10, you never know. Because you don't know what angel is in what human form. It says that before the flood, there were a species called the Nephilim. They were half-breed giants, like Gilgamesh. He was a half. He was very tall. The angels were tall too. And they gave birth. They had children with the humans and created the Nephilim. My life in Egypt has secret. I was a very special people that chosen by God. And if God wasn't one of the ones that Egyptians usually worship, one was entirely different. bringing offering, food, refreshment, someday I left through the temple and found a hidden door. Well, it wasn't that much hidden. It's just an area on a little journey through. Nobody even knew I was in there. My dad, about a week later, he killed me because I wanted to leave. Stabbed me with the sword, and my dagger. One of the daggers that pierced me to kill me. It's one of them. It's only very powerful. I ended up being magic at me. More magic than the priest ever could imagine. I used one of the daggers from one of the gods to kill me. I'm worried about the wrong thing. The book? Passed away from my first day. One for a long day. I'm not bugging. Believe me, if I was bugging, I'd be bugging. This is not bugging. I'm not off my pill. Yes, over there. I'm not mad. Believe me, if I was mad, you'd know it. I'm not mad. I'm calm, cool, and collected. No, you don't want to see an Italian female mad. You don't want to see that. That's a scary shit. No, I'm not mad. You do not want to see an Italian pissed off. No, this is calm, cool. This is like fucking every day. No, if I get mad, fucking, you're not gonna want to be around. You can definitely say at that point I'd be bugging. No, it's very rare for me to get pissed off. Very rare. I'm mostly calm, cool, and collected. I know how to handle my emotions. Some days are better than others. When it's got to do with my son, it's a lot of work days. But when it's just got to do with my emotions, I barely feel them. And, that's when you have to life. You rarely get to feel your own emotions because you're feeling everybody else. You know how draining that fucking is to feel everybody else's emotions? It's like walking on eggshells, literally. You don't know who's gonna be pissed off, and then fucking you mirror their emotions, and then they wonder why you're pissed off. It's like a fucking mirroring your shit. Why are you pissed off? Don't be pissed off at me just because you're pissed off. Like, geez Louise, I can only do what you're bringing forth to me. The energy you're giving me is making me mirror it to you. Get it? So I'm mad. You gotta ask yourself, are you the one that's really mad? Because apparently I'm not feeling my emotions, I'm feeling yours. Oh no, this is my speaker. This is my speaker. Waterproof. This weather is making my skin dry out. skin dry out. My lips are all chapped. I'm constantly thirsty. And not for the fucking emotions. I'm fucking thirsty 24/7. I'll have something to drink before I'll fucking have something to eat. I don't really eat when it's hot. I'll wait till nighttime, or I'll eat really, really early in the morning before the sun. But I mostly drink liquids throughout the day when it's hot. Now I've got fans all over the house. But I don't have mine on right now because it went to split a little bit while I'm sitting here. Oh, if you ever hear an Italian woman hollering, don't assume she's mad. If she's yelling louder than normal, people's voices, she's not mad. That's just how she talks. Because Italian women were loud as fuck. We ain't mad when we holler. We just make sure you hear us. No matter what area of the room you're in, you're gonna hear fucking us. I mean, depends on what you call okay. I'm not bugging. I'm in my emotions and my mind is thinking. People got the wrong idea of what's bugging. Maybe I do. I'm not bugging. I'm fucking ranting. What, a bitch isn't allowed to rant? Depends on what you call okay. Yeah, you can face palm your face all you want. I'm not gonna hide what I feel. I am who I am. You don't like it? I don't know what to tell you. You're not gonna be fucking happy-go-lucky all the damn time. Maybe you should have realized that when you decided to post those fucking pictures. Maybe I shouldn't post these because maybe my wife's gonna be feeling some type of way. Yeah, woman shot her husband. Now that's bourbon. Oh no. I feel so sorry for him. Oh God, DJ Young Flower. He's so funny. He reminds me of Chris Tucker. Christy. I don't care who wants to smash or what. I don't care about none of that. Because quite frankly, it's just a bunch of dudes saying how they would sleep with somebody else instead of another female. Quite frankly, that has nothing to do with me. Not a surprising thing for me, I can tell you that. But no, I'm not an outgoing person. I'd rather be around just a couple of people than being in a crowd. I'm an introvert. I'm not an extrovert. I can be by myself. My solitude, what keeps me grounded, what keeps me calm. I can only handle being in public, crowds of people and stuff for so long before I just feel like I'm around a bunch of stupid people. This is, and this story is like fucking. I'll tell you how much of a stupidity I don't like being around people. Just a certain amount, I'm good. Two or three, maybe four, five at the most, if I was really good to know them. The other night we went out to a barbecue place, and when we got done eating and everything, we had our doggy boxes to go with the leftovers home. Well, I had like three beef ribs in my plate, and instead of bringing a tray that is worthy of beef bones, the waitress brings me a standardized box. So I put my beef ribs in the standardized box, tried to close it, wouldn't close. I knew it wasn't going to close. And I just wanted the girl to be more common sense, have more than half a brain cell. Well, we get up to leave after we've paid everything, and the correct container still wasn't at the table for me to do anything. So I took the box, put it on the side where the opening was facing me, and I decided to get out of the booth and go, nope, I want to go home. I cannot deal with stupid people anymore right now. So they're right in the middle of the restaurant. So my sister goes to be a parent and asks for a bigger tray. I didn't even want to deal with people anymore. Like, I want to go home. I don't want to deal with these stupid people that don't even have common sense, let alone a brain to be a waitress. So, like, now, pretty much, like, I have to, when I go out to a store or something, I'm going to have to wear my foamy shirt just to make people listen or be smart. It just depends on who I'm going to get to be stupid. It just depends. Depends. Brought to you by the adult diaper. It just depends. For when you have bronchitis or incontinence. Why do people think that just because somebody wants to be completely honest, other people think, oh, they're off their meds? Sometimes it's got nothing to do with the meds. Maybe she's actually feeling it. Not everything has to do with meds. Meds are supposed to fucking guide me through the day of a 24-hour day to not be laid up in my bed depressed. Of course I'm still alive. Where would I be? I'm not dead. I'm not on the other side. Yes, I'm still alive. Where you been? I've been had a haircut since February of this year. Where you been? Working? Well, you're a fucking genius. You go out to the park and paint, and you forget the most important thing, the paint. You mean Dan? I don't know. I don't know. I really need to contact him, see how he's doing. I know he goes live at times. Ooh, I'll have to go and see. Good to be seen. My nephew watches the weirdest shit. Coffee can't get that hot enough to burn people's skin like that. Only fire can do that. And coffee's not as hot as fire is. That makes no sense. How does coffee burn so bad it's beyond recognition? That makes no sense. Not even capable. I don't understand. I don't think I want to.
Sokodo, also known as the way of walking alone. This is a set of principles created by Miyamoto Musashi, a famous samurai and swordsmanship expert in Japan. The Dokodo is a guide to living a fulfilling life through self-discipline, mindfulness, and detachment. Before we get into the principles of the Dokodo, let's first understand the context in which it was created. Miyamoto Musashi lived during the 17th century, a time when Japan was in a state of constant turmoil. He was a ronin, a masterless samurai, who spent much of his life traveling the country and engaging in duels with other warriors. Despite his reputation as one of the greatest swordsmen in history, Musashi eventually grew tired of violence and sought to find a more peaceful way of life. It was during this time that he wrote the Dokudo, which he intended as a guide for himself and others who wished to live a fulfilling life. The Dokudo is divided into 21 principles, each of which offers a unique perspective on how to live a fulfilling life. First, let's take a look at some of the overarching themes of the Dokudo. Self-discipline. Musashi believed that self-discipline was the key to living a fulfilling life. Without it, we're easily swayed by our emotions and impulses, which can lead to poor decisions and a lack of direction. By cultivating self-discipline, we're able to stay focused on our goals and make choices that align with our values. The second theme is mindfulness. Musashi believed that being present in the moment was essential to living a fulfilling life. When we're mindful, we're able to appreciate the beauty of the world around us and find joy in simple pleasures. We're also able to recognize our own thoughts and feelings, which allows us to respond to them in a more constructive way. The final theme of the Dokudo is detachment. Musashi believed that being attached to material possessions or external factors was a source of suffering. By letting go of our attachments, we're able to find inner peace and live a more fulfilling life. Accept everything just the way it is. Now that we've established the themes of the Dokudo, let's take a closer look at each of the 21 principles. The first principle is accept everything just the way it is. This principle emphasizes the importance of accepting reality for what it is, rather than trying to impose our own expectations onto it. By accepting things as they are, we're able to avoid unnecessary frustration and disappointment. We're also able to recognize the opportunities that exist within any given situation, rather than focusing solely on its drawbacks. Acceptance is a powerful tool for inner peace and contentment. When we learn to accept everything just the way it is, we let go of our need to control or change external circumstances. This principle encourages us to look at our lives with an open mind and heart, free from judgments or preconceived notions. By doing so, we allow ourselves to see the world as it truly is, rather than through the lens of our own expectations and desires. Of course, acceptance is easier said than done. It can be difficult to let go of our attachment to certain outcomes or situations, especially when they don't align with our vision for our lives. But by practicing acceptance, we can cultivate a greater sense of inner peace and contentment, regardless of what life throws our way. We can also learn to appreciate the beauty and wonder of the world around us, even in the midst of adversity. The second principle is do not seek pleasure for its own sake. This principle reminds us that pleasure should not be our sole focus in life. While it's important to enjoy the pleasures of life, such as good food, entertainment, and companionship, we should not become so consumed by them that we lose sight of our goals and values. By avoiding excessive pleasure seeking, we are able to maintain a sense of balance and perspective in our lives. The pursuit of pleasure is a natural and human desire, but it can also be a source of suffering. When we seek pleasure for its own sake, we often become trapped in a cycle of craving and addiction. This principle encourages us to approach pleasure with a sense of moderation and discernment, recognizing that true happiness comes not from external pleasures, but from within. Of course, this is easier said than done. It can be challenging to resist the allure of instant gratification and to cultivate a sense of inner contentment. However, by practicing self-discipline and moderation, we can learn to find joy in simple pleasures and to cultivate a greater sense of satisfaction in our lives. The third principle is do not under any